I still dream about him in the same way. I still have the recurring dream. I've come to terms with it, I can never really be healed of that loss, never, not really. I think I was just 17. I was working in my father's news agency in Ulmara. I had left school early before I was 14, and it was 1939, the end of the year, and the boys who joined up for the AIF were on final leave. I knew a couple of them, but I was working in the shop, and this very tall, handsome man in officer's uniform walked into the shop. And this was quite a sight for me because I'd never seen anybody in an officer's uniform before. And I was a nervous little thing who sold him a fountain pen. And that was it. He walked out, but 2 years later I got a letter from him after he'd escaped from Greece. And he said that the reason he wrote the letter was because he remembered me because the fountain pen came out of Greece with him. And so he wrote to me because he still had the fountain pen. I came home from the Middle East. He was in the 2nd Battalion of the AIF in the 6th Division, which was 1st Division into action in World War II, Australian AIF Division. They had been in Ceylon, and that was that business with Churchill wanting to keep them there, and what was the Prime Minister's name? Curtin insisted on their coming home because of the crisis in New Guinea. I think it was August they got home, but Charlie contracted typhoid and he was very ill on the way home. He also had a very swollen foot, and that turned out to be a broken toe. And I think it was about September before I met him. And he took me out to dinner, and a week later we got engaged. I mean, it was very quick. But we had been writing for a long time, so we had a couple of years of letters. He started to walk up the Kokoda track, but his broken toe wouldn't allow that because his foot swelled to such an extent he couldn't get a boot on. So they sent him back, and then he went as an instructor to a school of tactics and administration in Southport in Queensland. And knowing that, when he came back from New Guinea, he thought it was an opportunity to get married. So we were married in January 1943, so that was about 3 months later. It was pretty quick. We had a honeymoon, actually, Tweed Heads, and then we went on to the posting at Southport. Then he went to the Atherton Tableland, which meant I went back to Ulmara, and then he came home for a leave, and then he was posted to New Guinea. That was the ITP WEWAC campaign. I think they left late 1944. Not long after he got to New Guinea, he was appointed commanding officer of the 2nd 11th Battalion, which is a Western Australian battalion. He was 25 and he commanded a battalion in action in the ITP WEWAC campaign, which made him the youngest colonel to command a battalion in action in World War II. It didn't dawn on me at the time what a remarkable thing it was that the man so young would be doing this. All I was concerned about was his safety. After the war, he came home. We had great expectations, both romantic, both believed, happiness ever after. It wasn't as simple as that, of course. In the first place, there were no houses for returning soldiers. We had difficulty in finding a house. But getting a job was another matter. And he had been a farmer before he went to the war. And it was his wish and his plan to become a farmer when he came home, and I wasn't very enthusiastic about that. He got a job in Grafton in the, it was called the Producers Distributing Society, and it was essentially an office job. He wasn't happy there. In 1947, I think it was, the 41st Battalion in Lismore was re-raised, and he was appointed the commanding officer of that, which he'd been a member of as a junior officer before World War II. And he spent only about a year commanding that re-raised battalion when the Army offered him a posting in the regular Army. Told me he was going to Sydney, and he came back and he told me he'd joined the regular Army. It was all a bit overwhelming. I had a young child. I must say that I wasn't in very good shape after the baby was born because I had postnatal depression, and I was a bit of a mess. Then I moved down to join him in Seymour in Victoria, where he was posted when he joined the regular Army, and we moved into a converted Army mess hut. But we were as happy as could be, very happy there. It was fun. We spent a year in Seymour. At the end of the year in Seymour, he was posted to the Staff College, which is an honour. That's a course officers do if they destined for higher rank, for command. 6 months into the course at Queenscliff, Korean War broke out, and a few weeks after the Australian Army was committed to the war, he was appointed commanding officer of the 3rd Battalion to go to Korea. And that really shocked me. That really shocked me. I think he was aware that it would upset me very much. It never occurred to me to think what an honour it was. It indicated great respect for his capability. All I could think about was I was losing my husband and I might lose him forever. That's all I could think about. He took me back to Grafton. We had bought a house. It was divided into 2 flats. My mother was living in one side of the house, and we had tenants in the other side, so I went in to live with my mother in her side of the house. I'd only been there 5 weeks, or 6 weeks it was, after he'd arrived in Korea, that he was killed. Worst part about it all was that I'd had a premonition that he wouldn't come home. And I'm not too sure that that premonition wasn't an extraordinary guilt thing already operating, in that I felt after he was killed that he wouldn't have gone to war if I had been a bit more supportive and helped him get the farm that he thought that he wanted so badly. I'd spent my youth growing up amongst farmers, and I couldn't think of anything I wanted less than to go on a farm, because one has to have a love of it, and I didn't have it at that time. His death coincided with the end of my brother, who's 12 years younger than I am. It coincided with the end of his high school, or what was then called the Leaving Certificate year. He won a scholarship, and we, as a family, we decided that he had to have an opportunity. So there's only my mother, widowed, and I had Anthea, so we pooled our resources and moved to Sydney. First of all, I got a job through Legacy. An ex-officer that had served with my husband was involved in this business, and I went there as a shorthand typist. Now, I was the worst typist in the world. My shorthand wasn't too bad, Then I changed jobs. I felt that they had done it out of the goodness of their heart, and I should get out, and I wasn't good enough. So then I went for a job in the Dulux paint factory, not far from where I lived in. I lived in Concord, and the paint factory was in Cabarita. I managed there okay. Then I thought, there's no answer for this but to get some education. So I went ahead and went to TAFE. That was in about 1954, and didn't get a very good pass, but I did pass. Then I went to the repatriation department, as it was then called, when I finished that. I said, now I want to go to university. Somehow or other I got through first year, and second year I got a couple of credits. Got through third year. I can't say I had a brilliant pass, but I got through. I probably got through the exams late 57. I think I'm recorded as graduating in 58. Because I'd majored in psychology, I seemed to think I wanted to get work in that area. So my first job was psychological assessments of people who were looking for work and helping them work out where they wanted to go, what they'd be suited for. And then I got it, I don't know how I got onto it, but child welfare department, I suppose a bit of psychology, as a field officer in the department of what was then called child welfare. The work involved supervising delinquent children, taking testimonies from women who wanted their children adopted, though mostly unmarried mothers. It was so terrible what was happening to all those kids, and I thought, no, I can't do this. And then I saw a job advertised as a teacher for English in the Department of Technical Education. I applied for that and got it, and I think I got it because I was a war widow. So we had in-service training, but the first few years of doing that job was a nightmare for me because I wasn't properly trained to do that work. But I was much better at administrative work than I was at teaching. I ended up 25 years and was TAFE and rose to head of branch. I think I became a reasonably good teacher in time. Immediately after I retired, I went to Europe and studied French and cooking. And I came home, and that was about 1980. I hadn't been home long. I got this message from Lismore to say that the 41st Battalion, the battalion that Charlie had started his army career in, the one that he went back to after he came home from World War II, that they were wanting to build a memorial to him because they'd been looking over his service and realised how extraordinary it was. He'd been a commanding officer in the CMF, the AIF and the regular army, and I thought this was singularly distinctive. And that coincided with my enrolling in a course at what was then called the Hawkesbury Agricultural College, which is now the University of Western Sydney. They were doing an experimental course in non-directed learning. What we did, we all turned up and they put us in a room, just stood there and looked at us. And then they said, well, you're here to work out what you want to do and we'll help you do it. And some of them got disgusted and went home. Some of us stayed on, and it's probably one of the most remarkable things that I've ever done because I've got to do a project that I've got to work out for myself what I want to do. I thought, well, I knew nothing about Charlie's soldiering, so that's when I began the research for that. When I handed in the project at Hawkesbury, my supervisor said, why don't you turn this into a book? And then I set about doing that. Then I wrote the book, and when I finished the book, I thought, I know very little about the Korean War. Then I went up to why I went to Macquarie University, I'll never know. I've no idea why I went there. Probably had an idea I wanted to study history, because I was introduced to a professor, Professor Waterson, Duncan Waterson. He said, go down and enrol, because even though I hadn't an honours degree, they would accept me in a master's research degree. So I enrolled and I loved it, I really did. I went to a book launch one day and one of the directors on the board of the Australia Career Foundation was present, and so were some men from the War Memorial, and somehow or other we got talking. I said, look, I've got all this research I've done on the Australians in the Korean War, and I said, I think I ought to put it in the War Memorial. And the director of the Australia Career Foundation, one of the directors, said, well, the Australia Career Foundation would be happy to help you get this finished. And they offered me a little bit of secretarial help, and they also offered to put the tapes that I'd made onto CD. I designed the collection so that every individual soldier that I'd interviewed had a file of his own with all the documentation I could possibly collect, pictures, letters, documents, as much as I could get. I think I put about 14 boxes of material in the War Memorial, which is a big collection. I think there's certainly a therapeutic element to oral history, because the code is that you don't talk about your war experience, but really being able to talk about it's a tremendous relief. A lot of tears, a lot of heartache. Yes, I think it's been beneficial all round to me and to them. I have done a lot of reading in Buddhism, and I value the teachings. The Buddhists say that you only get what you can cope with. And also the Buddhists teach that everything has to be a learning experience. You have to learn and grow from your experience.